These are not habits that I implemented into my life because I felt motivated. Just a few years ago, I was in this phase in my life where I felt lost. I didn't know what I was doing. I made a lot of mistakes. I truly felt like I fucked up my life. And not only was I trying to really just get back to myself, but I was also dealing with a lot of emotions with it. I had a lot of shame. I had a lot of guilt. I felt like I was just never going to get back to myself. And the only thing that truly pulled me out of this point in my life was implementing smaller habits that allowed me to feel like myself again. People don't understand that when you hit a low point or when you hit rock bottom, it is not about leveling up or glowing up in that moment. It is literally just about feeling better day to day. It is about showing up for yourself again, having the motivation to understand that there is more potential in our future. And so when I was in this phase, it was not about just stepping into my potential or glowing up in that moment. I was just trying to feel okay again. And I think that's really why these worked so well for me. The first habit that I implemented was getting out of my environment, getting out of that headspace, leaving my apartment. It was such a small task or habit to really implement for myself, but it made a drastic change because a lot of times when we're depressed or we feel like we're not where we want to be, it is because our bodies are not in motion. So I basically forced myself to get out of my environment, to get out of my apartment, even if I didn't feel like it. That meant joining a gym so I could have people around me, putting myself in a new space, or even just getting out and walking. Just being outside made all of the difference that I felt within myself. I know this one sounds so simple, but it really shifted my energy more than anything, and it's actually something I still implement to this day, is that my daily walks and getting my steps in make me feel so much more regulated in my life. The second habit that I started implementing was learning to keep small promises to myself. The main reason that this one worked so well, because when I felt so behind and overwhelmed in my life, it felt like nothing could change. It felt like I wasn't going to get to where I wanted to be, and it felt like I truly needed to fix every aspect of my life at once, but that really wasn't the reality of it. And so I basically stopped trying to change everything at once. I basically just focused on doing the small things that I said I was going to do. I implemented a to-do list every single day, even if it was something like getting up and making my bed, doing my dishes, or just opening up my window for more sunlight. Like, it really was just that small of a change that I had to implement. Or even something like just stepping outside of my apartment, taking the first step. This was so powerful because one of the main things that I realized when I entered this point in my life where I just wasn't where I wanted to be is that I felt like I didn't trust myself anymore, and I had to rebuild that trust by showing up continuously every single day and doing the small things that I said I was going to do. This did wonders for me, and to this day, I believe it's one of the biggest things that made a difference, because I felt like I was in that point in my life because I didn't trust myself anymore, because I made a lot of mistakes. I did a lot of things that I would have never done previously. I broke that trust with myself, and it made me feel stuck in my life. So I had to learn to rebuild that. Number 3, this is always kind of how I've approached my life, but it is not waiting to feel ready or perfect to start something new. I have never really been someone in my life who waits to feel ready. I've always just believed that taking the first step is always going to get me to where I want to be, because it's better than just standing still and not doing anything. And looking back, I believe that this one is one of the biggest ones that truly saved me out of that point. Because if I waited any longer to feel good enough to actually make change in my life or to show up better for myself, I would have never shown up, and I would have still been in the same position that I was, which was literally making me depressed. So I had to change. I've also believed that waiting to feel ready or perfect in our life for anything, no matter what it is just an illusion, because there is never going to be the perfect time, perfect moment, perfect anything to show up for ourselves or to go after what we want. We just have to decide that we want more for ourselves and that we're not willing to stay in the same position. Number 4 is so crucial, and it's limiting what I consumed. I realized this had a much bigger impact on me than I really thought, because when I was in that space, I was constantly scrolling, constantly engaging in habits that just were not helping me in life. A lot of it was just consuming content that just wasn't good for me, that was reinforcing the position that I was in. I had to start cutting some things out of my life. I had to start removing things that were just no longer serving their purpose. And this was anything. This was people and environments, places, no matter what it is. habits, even my mindset, it all had to be filtered. And I had to start naturally and intentionally consuming things that reinforced that next level of my life. A lot of it was finding a few creators who maybe were very successful at building the life that I wanted, people that were just in a position in general that I wanted to be in. I started to watch these people, I started to learn from them, and I started to consume it more, so that it started to change my perspective on life. I realized that what I was consuming in my life was either pulling me into a deeper place or pulling me out of it. And the last one is allowing myself to be in a rebuilding phase. This one is very, very underrated because it works through that shame and that guilt that I didn't want to feel because I put myself in that position. One of the most major things for me in this part of my life was just accepting that I was in a rebuilding phase, that I had to take accountability for where I was in my life and stop avoiding myself, and to acknowledge where I was and that I wasn't where I wanted to be. I know that this can be a really hard one for me to work through because I think this is why I stayed in such a low point in my life for such a long time, is because I didn't want to acknowledge that I made mistakes to get there, that I put myself in that position, and that I just in general was not where I wanted to be in my life, and that I had more potential, and that I saw more for myself. I could not skip the middle phase, that in-between point that was so uncomfortable that I didn't want to be in. And because I didn't skip it or avoid it, that is how I started to actually feel better within myself, to start creating things I had wanted for a while. When I tell you, I literally just focused on feeling better day to day in my life. These habits may seem so small, but they truly made all the difference within myself and actually getting to a point in my life that I kept envisioning for myself, that I kept wanting, but I felt like I wasn't moving forward towards it. Those small habits completely changed my life and took me out of such a low point. They allowed me to reset and reinvent myself again. I did not wake up one day feeling completely different. That just was not the reality of it. It was these small habits done consistently every single day that actually dragged me out of that point in my life. Over time, it also slowly changed the way that I felt about my life, and I started to naturally feel like myself again. Eventually, it changed my life. If you are in a rebuilding season of your life, embrace it, because I promise you, it is building the highest version of yourself if you allow it to. Because had I never gone through that low point, those lower moments, or hitting rock bottom, I wouldn't have the clarity of who I wanted to become and how I was going to get there. I did not feel different overnight, but now that I look back, it was truly those small habits that I changed that pulled me out of that point of my life. That is what genuinely worked for me. Let me know if you're experiencing something similar to this.